Secondary action refers to smaller movements or gestures designed to support the primary actions of a character. It's important to note that secondary action needs to be subordinate to the main action and not distract from it. Secondary action should also make the point of the shot clearer by emphasizing the attitude or motivation behind the movement. So let's take a look at this animation as an example. What would you say this is an animation of? You'd probably say it's an animation of a tired guy jogging. You probably wouldn't say it's an animation of a tired guy jogging, then exhaling heavily, and then wiping his brow. The facial expression and the brow wipe are both secondary actions, but they both mesh into the overall action of jogging and emphasize the character's tiredness. They enhance instead of distract. You also want to make sure your secondary action can actually be seen. So keep the principle of staging in mind to make sure all your movements are clear. We wouldn't have him do that facial expression and brow wipe at the same time because his hand would be covering his face. It's easy to confuse secondary action with overlapping action, which we covered in the video on the principle follow through and overlapping action. Secondary action is similar to overlapping action, but there is an important distinction. The difference is that overlapping action is driven by the same force as the primary action, but moves on different timing. Secondary action, however, is driven by a different force. It enhances the idea of the primary action, but it isn't directly caused by it. So on our jogger, the movement of his shirt and hair are overlapping action because they are a result of the motion of the run. His facial expression and brow wipe, however, are secondary actions because they're generated by forces separate from the running. They aren't an inherent part of that action, they're additions that come from the character's emotional state. Let's go back to our animation of Tony the Panda and add in some secondary action. We've got his body done, so now we're going to add in his tail as secondary action. We're going to do it on a separate layer so we can see its motion more easily. I'm adding in some extra frames at the beginning so his tail has a little time to move before his body starts. Then, as he starts to turn, the base of his tail does get pulled along with the body, but the end is still doing its own thing for a frame or two before it starts whipping around. Now we want the tail's movement to enhance the main action, which is the jump. So I'm going to put in a little whip action as he leaves the ground. From this point, the tail is basically just being pulled along with the body, so it's not really secondary action at this point, since it isn't moving under its own power. Okay, I've got all the frames in, so let's play it back and see how it looks. There you go. He definitely looks cuter with his tail, and that whip action makes the jump look much more powerful. I think that's a good addition to this animation. Here are some other principles related to secondary action. Feel free to jump to one of these or head to the next video. I'll see you there.